Check, 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 check. Check, check, check. Check, check, check. Test one, two, test. Check, check. Test one, two, test.
Hello, hello. Good evening, and welcome to the December 1st, 2021 special meeting of the Board of Education. The time is now 6:05 p.m. We will begin with a roll call conducted by our board clerk, Ms. Zuki Ellis.
Director Ellis is here. Director Vu.
Here.
Director Foster.
Here.
Director Broderick.
Here.
Director Allen.
Here.
Director Kopp. Here. Director Cadillo.
Here. Thank you. I would like to remind everyone that this meeting is being live streamed. And then I'd like to move on to approve the order of the main agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. That was seconded by Vice Chair Vu. Vote, please.
Director Ellis is yes. Director Vu.
Yes.
Director Foster.
Yes.
Director Broderick.
Yes.
Director Allen.
Yes.
Director Kopp. Yes. Director Cadillo.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes unanimously 7-0. And I'll turn it over to you, Superintendent Gothard, to provide remarks regarding Envision SPPS and the decisions we've made before us this evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, St. Paul Public Schools community. Before we bring before you a resolution for your consideration tonight, I've asked Chief of Operations Jackie Turner to go through a presentation for details that will be found in the resolution. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Turner.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Gothard. Prior to the resolution being read and asking the board to take a vote on that, would like to just provide a brief summary of how we got here, go over specifically the program closures, mergers, and the relocations that we are recommending. Also provide a summary of the impact that Envision will have, and then we'll actually go into the resolution at that particular point. Want to remind the board and members of the community that Envision SPPS is part of the district strategic plan. It actually falls specifically in objective 5.3, where we plan to, and we said that we would align school facilities with well-rounded programs. Specifically, that would look at our programs and how they align with our facilities, and we would compare that to parent demand, school choice, enrollment patterns, and again, this was part of the actual strategic plan, St. Paul Public Schools strategic plan. Our rationale and how we actually got here is that we believe that all students in St. Paul Public Schools deserve a well-rounded education. We classify or define well-rounded education as both the core subjects that we expect and that are expected with our state statute around reading, writing, and math, that every child should have that. Then we also believe in St. Paul that all children should have access to a complement of other supports, programs, curriculum that provides a student to be well-rounded. And some of those include arts, music, science, extracurricular activities, field trips, community and supports. Sometimes we call them community experts who may come into the classroom. So all of these things we believe make a well-rounded education for a child. Unfortunately, as we look at our data surrounding enrollment, as we look at the data around decrease in birth rates, not only in Minnesota, but throughout the country, in Minnesota, as well as in the city of St. Paul, we see that we have a decrease in enrollment. We also know that more of our students in the city of St. Paul are electing other schools outside of St. Paul Public Schools, such as open enrollment and charter. Those two things combined have us in a position where we have an extremely high excess rate of empty classrooms, to the tune of 8,000 just in our elementary schools. So as we began to look at that, we know that based on all of that data, that we need to close schools. And so with that, we developed Envision SPPS. We adopted early on in the process in January of early of 2020. The board agreed on and received a decision-making structure and a planning process that we would follow for Envision. We identified the Board of Education as a steering committee. Dr. Gothard was issued and delegated to be the executive sponsor for Envision SPPS. I was named as a project sponsor. We agreed that we'd have a core planning team of district representatives from various departments such as facilities, enrollment, special education, early childhood, the Office of Schools. And then we would also have planning groups. These planning groups would consist of members, both internal as well as external, and the goal of the planning groups would be to look at data from their various perspectives. And we had 11 of them. We also said that we would take information back to the senior leadership team as we began to prepare recommendations to the board. We were very clear up front of how community would be involved. In fact, we both looked at internal and external stakeholders. And we informed the board as well as the community that we would be using the International Association of Public Participation framework for Envision. And what that framework calls for is that there's a pattern and a spectrum of how you engage people. And goes all the way from the left-hand side to inform, all the way to the right with collaborate. We were clear with the board as well as external that initially at various stages of the Envision, it would be considered informed. That clearly the hands and the decision for which schools would be closed would fall in the hands of the board as the steering committee, and as that's your role as a board member, as policymakers. We informed the board that as we went throughout this process, that the public would begin to get involved in this process as they move down the spectrum under consult and collaborate when we move to specific sites that would be post-vote. The collaborative work groups began, some of them actually in 2019. They officially rolled off when the board adopted Envision SPPS. And there's 11 of them, ranging all the way from college and career to well-rounded education work group, which is where we built the platform of what well-rounded education means and how it was defined. Those work groups consisted of about 120 people, both internal and external. The work groups that have the stars on them included people on the work groups that were external, parents, community partners, people that did not work for St. Paul Public Schools. In fact, I actually want to really give, as I shared before, the Hmong language work group really started this work and asked for a process to help them get to their final recommendation. At the time when they asked before this board in the summer of 2019, we didn't have Envision SPPS formed at that time. We really created it off of their first engagement. Their work group was primarily almost 100% parents. They had about 24 members on there. A significant number of them were parents. But in any regards, we follow that same process for special education, for integration, enrollment, and from those 11 work groups, they use the following criteria to review and provide findings. Data, looked at facilities utilization. We looked at accessibility of particular programs and buildings. We looked at the location and density of schools, where students lived, where they bused from, how many students lived in the city, open enrolled. We looked at market demands. We looked at school choice data, at individual schools, and knew what percentage of families chose which schools by the date. For several years, we looked at that data. We also looked at where families were coming from in 5th grade and matriculating on for 6th grade. Of course, we looked at the sustainability, how well a school sustained their program, if they had enough enrollment to generate enough money to purchase enough teachers, to purchase enough curriculum to provide a well-rounded education. We know there were some things that were unknown, such as the Cruz Guzman and other legislative things that may come up that we just don't know. We took those into account as we presented our findings. From that, we actually then presented to this board an initial slate of schools that would be proposed for closure, mergers, or relocations. Since that time, on October 11th, when we made it public of those closings, there has been a number of meetings. There's been 19 school-based meetings. We've had different listening sessions and input sessions that were bilingual. And you can see forth the number of other public meetings, including the special sessions and the regular school board meetings, as well as committee of the board meetings. At this time, I'd like to move through the some of the changes that are not actually part of the resolution, but these are changes that administration will be implementing and acting on. But there are certain changes in the resolution, which specifically are closures, that will be part of the legal resolution. But it's important for community to know that these particular changes that will be discussed here will also be acted upon, but don't need a legal approval for. In Area A, Latour du Nord Lower will be merging with LNFI Upper at the Upper Campus. The LNFI Lower site will be repurposed for Early Childhood Education Hub. Parkway will be reopened as a Hmong language immersion and culture program for the Upper Campus, and that will be paired with the Lower Campus of Phelan. In Area C, Johnny Johnson will merge with Bruce Bento at Bruce Bento. In Area D, Cherokee Montessori program will relocate and merge with J.J. Hill at J.J. Hill. Cherokee will reopen as a community school. Riverview Community School will close and merge at Cherokee. In Area E, Galthill will close and merge at Hamlin and will reopen as an early childhood education hub. In Area F, Jackson Community will merge at Maxfield, and the Hmong language program will close and merge with Phelan at Phelan. Also in Area F, there's some additions that we want to make clear. The J.J. Hill Montessori program will relocate to the Obama site once the remodeling is complete, either in the fall of 24 or 25. That does depend on the construction timeline. It will reopen as the Barack and Michelle Obama school. It will also house a middle school program, grades 6-8 at that time. At the start of the 25-26 school year, Capitol Hill will no longer pathway directly to Highland Park. The Capitol Hill students will pathway to their community high schools. As we look at, prior to looking specifically at the resolution, as we look at the recommendations overview, we know that 11 of our schools are being expanded or changed due to parent demand, program consolidation. We have one particular pathway change, and we actually have 6 sites that will be recommended and read later for actually closure. Although I think it's important to note, with these 6 sites, there will be a legal reading of a resolution to close these sites that will happen shortly. And I'll just read those sites: Galtier, Obama, Johnny Johnson, Jackson, J.J. Hill, and LNFI. But I think it's important to know that as we look at Galtier, Obama, J.J. Hill, and LNFI Lower, they will reform into a different program. Gaultier will become a early childhood hub. Obama will continue to operate as a school upon the completion of construction. The J.J. Hill will be relocated but then reopen as an early childhood hub, as well as the LNFI lower. So they're in an effort to be transparent with the community, we wanted to share this because what the resolution, what you will hear shortly, is going to list these sites as being closed, but it's important to know that a number of these sites are actually reopening. As we looked at our total system impact, some of you may recall that Dr. Gothard asked that as we entered into the Envision SPPS process, that we would not impact more than 10% of our student population. As we look at the recommendations as they stand that you will receive today, we're at about 6% of our district population being impacted. The specific sites that will be recommended resolution to, we will be asking the board to adopt the resolution of an Envision SPPS, which will specifically, again, read, school closures will happen at the end of the 21-22 school year for the following schools: Gaultier Elementary, Jackson Preparatory, John A. Johnson Achievement Plus, Latour du Nord Lower, Parkway Montessori and Community Middle School, and at the end of the 22-23 school year, Barack and Michelle Obama. At this time, Chair Foster, I stand ready for the board to read the actual resolution.
Chief Turner, members of the board, Chair Foster, if I could, one correction on slide 14, Chief Turner. I believe J.J. Hill is listed, and I believe that should be Parkway. And I just want to make sure in the resolution, you correct me, but I want to make sure our resolution is correct with what you've presented.
So the 6 sites, those particular sites will be impacted because J.J. Hill, the program is moving. So that slide doesn't necessarily correspond to the sites that are physically closing, General Counsel. Those are the sites that have an impact because something has happened to them, that they're being moved or adjusted.
Thank you, Chief Turner.
The sites that are actually being recommended for school closure and will be read as a part of the resolution are following. I can read them again, General Counsel, if you like me to. Gaultier Elementary, Jackson Preparatory Elementary, John A. Johnson, Latour du Nord Lower, Parkway Montessori and Community Middle School, and Barack and Michelle Obama. And at this time, Chair Foster, we stand ready, or if you'd like to delegate to Vice Chair Vu to.
I'm going to try. Okay. Be ready. Whereas Independent School District number 625, St. Paul Public Schools, has engaged in a process entitled Envision SPPS for providing its students with a full range of educational opportunities and student supports that a robust, well-rounded education affords. Whereas a notice of public hearing on the question of the necessity of and practicability of closing the following schools: Barack and Michelle Obama Elementary School, Gaultier Elementary School, Highwood Hills Elementary School, Jackson Preparatory Elementary School, John E. Johnson Achievement Plus Elementary School, Leap High, L'Étoile de Nord French Emerging Lower, Parkway Montessori and Community Middle School, and Paul and Sheila Wellstone Elementary was published in a legal newspaper of the school district for 2 successive weeks on November 15, 2021 and November 22nd, 2021. And whereas the time and place of the public hearing was set forth in the notice, and whereas Barack and Michelle Obama Elementary School, Gaultier Elementary School, Highwood Hills Elementary School, Jackson Preparatory Elementary School, John A. Johnson Achievement Plus Elementary School, Leap High School, Leopold de Nord French Immersion Lower, Parkway Montessori and Community Middle School, and Paul and Sheila Wellstone Elementary were identified in the notice as schools considered for closing. And whereas the reason for the proposed closings were set forth in said notice, and whereas numerous opportunities were provided for members of the community to learn about the proposals and to be heard whether for or against the question of closing Barack and Michelle Obama Elementary School, Gaultier Elementary School, Highwood Hills Elementary School, Jackson Preparatory Elementary School, John A. Johnson Achievement Plus Elementary School, Leap High School, Leopold de Nord French Immersion Lower, Parkway Montessori and Community Middle School, and Paul and Sheila Wellstone Elementary, including regular meetings of the Board of Education on February 18, 2020, January 19, 2021, July 20th, 2021, October 19, 2021, public comment, and November 16, 2021, public comment. Special meetings of the Board of Education on September 20th, 2021, October 4th, 2021, October 11, 2021, October 18, 2021, October 25th, 2021, November 1st, 2021, November 8th, 2021, and November 15th, 2021. Board of Education Committee of the Board meeting October 5th, 2021. More than 19 school-based information sessions held between October 20, 2021 and November 10th, 2021. 5 multilingual specific informational sessions in Hmong, Karen, Somali, and Spanish during the first week of November 2021. 2 public information sessions on October 26, 21 and November 8, 2021. 2 Board of Education listening sessions on October 28, 2021 and November 11, 2021. And 1 public hearing on November 30th, 2021. Whereas a public hearing on said closings was conducted in accordance with the Minnesota Statute 123B.51, Subdivision 5, pursuant to said notices by the Board of Education beginning at 5:30 p.m. on November 30th, 2021 at 360 Coburn Street, St. Paul, Minnesota 55102. And whereas testimony and materials were received during the course of the public hearing by anyone in favor or opposed to said closings, and the public hearing was not deemed closed until everyone who requested to speak had the opportunity to do so. And whereas the Board of Education has considered the following presentations and materials from administration at regular meetings of the Board of Education on February 18, 2020, January 19, 2021, and July 20, 2021. Presentations and materials from administration at special meetings of the Board of Education on September 20th, 2021, October 4th, 2021, October 11th, 2021, October 18th, 2021, October 25th, 2021, November 1st, 2021, November 8th, 2021, and November 15th, 2021, and November 29th, 2021. Presentations and materials from administration at the Board of Education Committee of the Board meeting October 5th, 2021, plus public comments conducted prior to the regular meetings of the Board of Education on September 21st, 21, October 19th, 2021, and November 16th, 2021. Public comments provided at Board of Education listening sessions on October 28th, 2021, and November 11th, 2021. Emails and other communications from various stakeholders and public testimony at 1 public hearing on November 30th, 2021. Whereas Through the course of many presentations, public comments, and listening sessions, the Board of Education directed school district administration to remove Leap High School, Highwood Hills Elementary School, and Paul and Sheila Wellstone Elementary School from the list of schools being recommended for culture. And whereas on December 1st, 2021, the Board of Education heard and considered the final recommendations of administration to close Barack and Michelle Obama Elementary, Galtier Elementary, Jackson Preparatory Elementary School, John A. Johnson Achievement Plus Elementary School, Leopold Denord French Immersion Lower, and Parkway Montessori Community Middle School. Now, therefore, be it resolved that after considering the materials in the record, the testimony presented at the said public hearing held pursuant to the Minnesota Statute 123.51, Subdivision 5, and the recommendations of administration, the Board of Education, Independent School District Number 625, hereby determines that the Board of Education, Independent School District Number 625, hereby approve and adopts the Vision SPPS plan dated December 1st, 2021. In doing so, the Board of Education determines it is necessary and practical that Barack and Michelle Obama Elementary School, located at 707 Holly Avenue, St. Paul, Minnesota, 55104, shall be closed as of June 30th, 2023, or as soon thereafter as practical. That Galtier Elementary School, located at 1317 Charles Avenue, St. Paul, Minnesota, 55104, shall be closed as of June 30th, 2022, or soon thereafter as practical. That Jackson Preparatory Elementary School, located at 437 Edmond Ave, St. Paul, Minnesota, 55103, shall be closed as of June 30th, 2022, or soon thereafter as practical. At John A. Johnson Achievement Plus Elementary School, located at 740 York Avenue, St. Paul, Minnesota, 55106, shall be closed as of June 30th, 2022, or soon thereafter as practical. Leopold Denord French Immersion Lower, 1305 Prosperity Avenue, St. Paul, Minnesota, 55106, shall be closed as of June 30th, 2022, as or soon thereafter as practical. That Parkway Montessori and Community Middle School, located at 1363 Bush Avenue, St. Paul, 55106, shall be closed as of June 30th, 2022, or soon thereafter as practical. The closure of Barack and Michelle Obama Elementary School, Galtier Elementary School, Jackson Preparatory Elementary School, John A. Johnson Achievement Plus Elementary School, Leopold Denord French Immersion School Lower, and Parkway Montessori Community Middle School is necessary and practical based upon the following. The school district's enrollment is declining. Birth rates in the city of St. Paul have declined over the past 6 years from approximately 5,933 births in 2013 to 14 to approximately 5,059 births in 2019-20. That St. Paul resident kindergarten enrollment has declined from approximately 4,452 students in 2018-19 to approximately 4,150 students in 2021. Based on the current birth rate projections, these number is expected to be approximately 3,677 students in 2025-26. The percentage of St. Paul residents, K-12 children enrolled in St. Paul schools, has decreased from 67% in 2013-14 to 62% in 2019-20. In 2019-20, approximately 16,058 St. Paul resident students enrolled in other public school options. The St. Paul district currently has an excess of 8,000 empty seats across the district. The decline in school district enrollment has resulted in underutilization of certain school district elementary and middle schools. The school district currently has an excess of 8,000 empty seats across the school district. At Barack and Michelle Obama Elementary School, only 40% of the building's capacity is being used for educational purposes. Analysis from school year 2019-22. At Galtier Elementary, only 61% of the building's capacity is being used for educational purposes. Analysts from school year 2019-2020. At Jackson Preparatory Elementary School, only 71% of the building capacity is being used for educational purposes. Analysts from school year 2019-2020. At John A. Johnson Achievement Plus Elementary School, 79% of the building's capacity is being used for educational purposes. Analysts from school year 2019-2020. At Leotor de Nord French Immersion, lower, only 79% of the building's capacity is being used for educational purposes. Analysis from school year 2019-2020. At Parkway Montessori and Community Middle School, only 69% of the building's capacity is being used for education purposes. Analysis from school year 2019-2020. The school district's ideal utilization for its elementary and middle school is the 85% of the building's capacity is being used for educational purposes. Underutilized schools produce negative consequences for both financial and academic programming. By closing these schools, the school district can optimize the utilization of its remaining school buildings and align school facilities with well-rounded programs. The schools designated for closures are not sustainable, meaning they have less than the school district's ideal student enrollment, 450 to 599 students at the elementary school level and 720 students at the middle school level. At Barack and Michelle Obama Elementary School enrollment for kindergarten to grade 5 for school year 2019-2020 was 294. For school year 2021, enrollment was 266. At Galtier Elementary School, enrollment for kindergarten to grade 5 for school year 2019-20 was 204. For school year 2020-2021, enrollment was 157. At Jackson Preparatory Elementary School, enrollment for kindergarten to grade 5 for the school year 2019-20 was 296. For school year 2021, enrollment was 269. At John A. Johnson Achievement Plus Elementary School, enrollment for kindergarten pre-K grades 5 school year year 2019-20 was 286. For school year 2020-2021, enrollment was 280. Elliott de Nord French Immersion lower enrollment for kindergartens grades 2 for school year 2019-20 was 242. For school year 2020-21, enrollment was 183. At Parkway Montessori and Community Middle School, enrollment for grades 6 to 8 for school year 2019-20 was 353. For school year 2021, enrollment was 290. The remaining school sites in the school district have sufficient space to accommodate these students. Barack and Michelle Obama Elementary School has a consistent pattern of being under-enrolled and underutilized. The program is not able to generate funding to provide well-rounded education. In addition, the facility was initially constructed and designed to house a larger elementary program or secondary program. Galtier Elementary School has a consistent pattern of being under-enrolled and underutilized. The program is not able to generate funding to provide well-rounded education. The school facility has limited capacity to grow as compared to other nearby school district elementary schools. Jackson Preparatory Elementary School has a consistent pattern of being under-enrolled and underutilized. The program is not able to generate funding to provide a well-rounded education. The school facility has limited capacity to grow as compared to other school district schools that can consolidate a district-wide dual language immersion program. John A. Johnson Achievement Plus Elementary has a consistent pattern of being under-enrolled and underutilized. The program is not able to generate funding to provide a well-rounded education. The school facility configuration is not ideal to house an elementary program because it was initially constructed to house a secondary program. The Nord French immersion lower has a consistent pattern of being under-enrolled and underutilized. The program is not able to generate funding to provide a well-rounded education. The school facility has limited capacity to grow compared to other school district schools that can consolidate district-wide dual language immersion program. Parkway Montessori and Community Middle School has a consistent pattern of being under-enrolled and underutilized. The program is not able to generate funding to provide a well-rounded education. Montessori is not sustainable at the middle school program. By closing these underutilized and unsustainable schools, the school district can optimize its resources to provide all students the full range of educational opportunities and student supports that a robust, well-rounded education affords. Well-rounded education is one that meets the Minnesota state's educational standards by providing students with learning opportunities to give them the skills to succeed in school, college, and career. Building on a deep understanding of the core essentials of reading, writing, and math, students are taught by educators with expertise in science, arts, and social studies, world languages, physical education, and health while having access to an array of enrichment opportunities. As a team, educators work together to deliver culturally relevant lessons personalized to each student's specific needs. A holistic, well-rounded education also provides a broad range of school-based services such as a full-time counselor, social worker, and nurse to address students' social, emotional, mental, and physical needs. There may also be other specialized staff dedicated to family engagement and to address the needs of students and families from specific cultural backgrounds. The Board of Education selected schools for closure based on the following data points and parameters. Facilities, including operational efficiency, retention of capital investments, requirements for new capital investments, and spatial alignment. Equity, including avoiding unintended consequences and further integration. Accessibility, including physical accessibility and program accessibility, transportation. Location and density of students and schools. Enrollment, market demands, pathway programming, financial funding, sustainability, legal requirements. School districts administration considered all data compiled through the Envision SPPS process and public and staff feedback at various meetings and public hearing. The school district considered alternatives to the closing of schools, but determined that the closures were necessary to address effectively the identified concerns that have arisen due to declining enrollment, the underutilization of school buildings, and the unsustainabilities of schools identified for closure. The school district set a goal to minimize disruptions to students by establishing a 10% cap so that no more than 10% of school district students will be disrupted from school closings. Thank you. With that, I'll turn the mic over to Vice Chair Vu.
So there was a motion on the floor to approve the Envision proposal as proposed. But what I want to explain to my colleagues today is that I have been sitting here with you all, listening to our administrators, listening to each and every one of you. I have sat here and I've listened to public comment, public hearing. I've read all the emails that we all get. I've answered some of the phone calls, not all of them that I've gotten. But earlier today, as I was getting ready to come here tonight and vote on this proposal, my son came home from school. And he came up to me and he said, "Dad, don't close my school." And I finally realized that I hadn't really grappled with the fact that I'm closing his school. And what I want to propose today to our administrators and to our board members is that we at least have a discussion about not closing any of these schools at the end of this school year. So what I would like to do is I motion to propose that no St. Paul Public Schools will be closed by the end of 2021, 2022. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
And I want thank you for seconding, Director Broderick. And the reason why this discussion needs to happen is because one community has been asking for it. So one or two things are going to happen tonight. Either we're going to pass the modified resolution as it was read by Chair Foster, or we're going to not pass any resolution at all, and no schools will close. And I just want to be clear that this motion is primarily to discuss the possibility of no schools closing for this year and to vote on that. Now, if that doesn't pass, then we will move forward to the motion of the Envision SPPS as proposed, as read by Chair Foster. Now, the only question I have, we can start questioning with me. The only question I have for this motion is I have a question for General Counsel Long. Have we satisfied the scope of Minnesota statute section 123B 51 subdivision 5 to close the proposed schools in the Envision proposal?
Chair Foster, members of the board, Superintendent Gothard, Vice Chair Vu, in response to your question, yes.
Thank you. I will now deliberate to my board members if they have any questions or comments about this motion.
Vice Chair Vu, could you explain further, and particularly in light of the answer that General Counsel Long gave to you about whether we had satisfied all legal requirements? What is the other, do you have another reason or motive for wanting to pass this motion now prior to us voting on the resolution?
That is my primary concern, and I just want to open it up to other board members if they have any concerns.
I'm always open to having conversation, for sure. So thank you for motioning this, because I think it's a conversation that as a board, we should have publicly. You know, closing schools is extremely hard. It's been a long haul here, right, with the community, but we've heard from the community. We've heard from administration, studied the data on our own. We've done a lot of legwork. And we recognize that some pretty drastic changes really need to happen in our St. Paul Public Schools. I'm not exactly feeling wholehearted about the idea of closing any building, but I do know that we need to make some drastic changes. And to be frank, our outcomes are not nearly where we need them to be. And we need to start focusing our resources on producing better outcomes. And in our research of this and in our process, through this process of understanding through administration and through the deep dives that we've done into finance or into the buildings and different folks that work there, teachers, principals, and sometimes even parents, who also have concerns of outcomes. It kind of brought me to a place where I'm not okay necessarily with closing the building, but what I am okay with and what I am here to do is to provide a quality education for all students. Now, some parts of this plan, for me, I just couldn't stomach. Some things didn't feel ethically aligned with what our values should be here at St. Paul Public Schools, which is why I think it was great that we were able to hear from the community and take these deep dives and start to prepare a proposal that can start to move us towards doing something drastic without being extremely traumatic in the process. And I believe we did a really good job. I'm really proud of our board for actually listening as one who's typically on the other side as a protester and just hear the wah, wah, wah and never really hear the voice of the people coming out in the plan or the redesign or even what they decide to do moving forward. It's either, you know, they're going to keep moving forward and doing what they're doing and they haven't heard from the community, or they're going to keep moving forward and they haven't heard from community. You know, we've always, as the other side, had to do some really drastic things to get things shut down. In this situation, I feel like it was a collective collaboration that brought us to this point, an understanding amongst community and our board and folks that were in those buildings that something drastically needed to change. And so, talking about not closing the schools right now is a conversation that can happen. But we do have to have a conversation about definitely closing some schools and consolidating some finances so that we can build the programs that produce the outcomes that we are expected to give as a public entity of the education system. And we are not doing that right now. Prolonging this will take us to a place where we might not do it for another year or two. When I think about 35,000 students, I don't know if I'm okay with just sitting still. So thank you for opening this up so that we can have this conversation. I think not closing right now could be detrimental to moving forward. I think that we've done some due diligence, and I hope that we can get to a place where we make a drastic decision today and start moving towards better outcomes for St. Paul Public Schools.
Director Cobb.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and thank you, Director Allen. You were reading my mind on a lot of this. A lot of my reflection on this during this time is what happens if we act, what happens if we don't. And that's been hard because we know action will bring grief and sadness to many in our community who found schools that they loved, that built community that was important to them. And the prospect of losing that is real, and the difficulty in that is deeply felt. And I also thought about every single year in a child's education matters. In making that decision for hundreds and thousands of students to say, well, we can wait one more year before you get what you need, I can't do that. And so I have had to come to terms with and reconcile two very difficult things. And I thank my colleague for saying it so well. Our business is student outcomes, and that's not just academics, it is good school culture, it's all of those things. But we all know we have work to do in these areas. We talk about this all the time. This is our chance to build a strong foundation to do those things. I respect that not everyone will agree with this way. People who love schools and love St. Paul Public Schools can disagree, and that's okay, that's fair. But we have an obligation to act and to move. And I am comfortable proceeding as we have discussed. And thank you for the opportunity to talk.
Thank you, Director Cobb. Director Carrillo.
Yeah, a clarifying question, Vice Chair Vu. The request or the motion that you just made was to delay the closure, so that each one of those dates gets delayed 1 year for each one of the schools that's proposed to close, or are we actually saying delay the decision? I want to have full clarity on the motion.
No, the motion was to have no St. Paul Public Schools close at the end of the 21-22 school year, which is the end of this, at the 2021 school year, which is the current year.
Yes. 21, 22.
21, 22,
Yeah.
yes.
So understanding this correctly, then that would mean that a future decision on closing schools would have to be fully meted out in an additional motion in the future with hearings and how do you call it, and notices and all the legal requirements, correct?
That would be correct.
Okay. Um, I'm tempted. I'm tempted. I'm tempted. I think one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot recently, and um, is the core component of the um, the voice that I've summarizing the comments that we received has not necessarily been one of please do not act on the need to make difficult decisions. It has been address the issues that have brought us to this place. And um, that's something that is not part of this resolution. Is something that I will probably not be a part of since, as many of you know, my term as an interim or appointed board member ends the moment that Chair Foster signs her certificate of election. But it is something that I would highly encourage the board and highly encourage the administration to be willing to operate from a frame of humility and a frame of willing to listen, not listen from a high up place, from a white tower of doctorates and erudition, but to go down and meet the parents where they are and actually co-create a district that is kind to our kids. This is not this resolution though. When Envision SPPS was first brought over to us, we had the difficult, problematic, concerning, and also alarming set of numbers that were telling us that action needs to be taken. Some of the schools, and I'm going to be very, very crystal clear and transparent. When I first joined the board, I saw the numbers at one of our schools at Highwood Hills, and I was like, whoa, The more and more I dug into what's going on in each individual school, the story of the schools, the more it's been harder for me to be willing to say, yes, I wholeheartedly approve of a resolution to close schools, to move schools, understanding the nuances of why we pulled the 3 schools out from the list. And the fact that it was a very drawn out and consensus driven approach. I think at this point, we were kind of left in a position of having to somewhat agree to disagree and move forward. Biggest concern that I have is that, and this is something that I think everybody in this room agrees with, is we do this and we don't change our hearts. And who we become as a district is still the district from 20 years ago that did this and did not listen. Or the other concern too that I have is we don't do this and we face the consequences of having to essentially, shave off the top for everybody, because that's what it looks like. It's a shave off the top, and it's further erosion of our capacity to provide services that we considered, I would say, very important because we agreed and pushed forward as a board. And I'm speaking for previous board, but really we inherited and agreed to the how do you call it, the strategic plan. So with that in mind, I think we ought to think about what exactly do we want by delaying the vote? What do we achieve? And politically speaking, how can we get to a place where a board would be willing to make that decision and able to, yet at the same time holding the balance of knowing that the community is going to, you know, have this concern. So I think feeling this way with the hands tied, we should move forward. It is something that I don't take lightly, and I do. I've heard before people talking about, our burden as board members, and oh, you have it really hard. Yeah, we do have it hard. It's hard, with the sleepless nights and such. But really, let's be clear here: the burden is not on us. The burden is on our kids and on our families. They're the ones who are paying the price for decades of inaction. But then again, parents here who are saying, "Hey, this action that you're taking is detrimental to us," and that is true. It is detrimental to some schools, some facilities, some families. The question is, will this get us to a place where everybody in St. Paul can receive a well-rounded education? And I honestly, from the bottom of my heart, want to say I do not want to do anything with this plan, from an emotional perspective. But we administer more than just a handful of schools. We administer the future of Independent School District 625.
Thank you, Director Creel. Director Broderick?
I'd like to just ask two questions. So one of you, Vice Chair Vu, and one of General Counsel Long. If we were to pass the motion that you just made, how would this affect the resolution, and would it indeed contradict some wording in the resolution? Yes, I'm asking you, Vice Chair.
My understanding is if this were to pass, then this would cancel this resolution and we would move forward with no schools closing at the end of 20 the school year.
In other words, your motion would, in effect, nullify the resolution that is being brought, that Chair Foster just read.
Yes, I think so. Now, I would defer to General Counsel Long to answer the second half of your question.
Through the chair, Director Broderick, yes, that would be my interpretation of the effect of that motion as well.
In other words, we would be, okay, I already said it, so I won't be redundant. I've been accused of that on more than one occasion by my beloved wife. My question of you, General Counsel Long, is I want to expand a little bit on the question that Vice Chair Vu asked you, which was very specific to a Minnesota statute. And of course, obviously, if you felt that we had not complied in our process with what's expected of us under that statute, you would be recommending us to not go further. Would that be correct?
Through the chair, Director Broderick, yes.
Okay. So my question then becomes, because people, whatever the decision is made tonight, there are going to be people that are going to be happy about it or disappointed with it. There may be folks who are unhappy enough that they will want to challenge it, and they may want to challenge it from a legal perspective. Now, what you've said is that we are in compliance with the statute, but would it be possible for people to challenge us on the credibility and validity of our process during particularly the last several weeks, but even prior to that, as we were putting together the original Envision SPPS. And if that would become a court case, would we be able to defend ourselves on those merits?
Through the chair, Director Broderick, I'm hesitant in a public meeting to get into what would essentially be attorney-client privilege communication and analysis on potential legal claims, risks, and defenses. It's a conversation I'm happy to have with you, but to be giving essentially legal advice in a public setting, I feel would be inappropriate for me to do.
Well, then see if you'd be willing to answer this particular question then, because you have sat here with us throughout this entire time over these last several weeks, which have been at times somewhat painful and sometimes very inspiring and encouraging because of the people that came to talk to us, particularly our students. Would you be willing to say that we would be able to defend the process that you witnessed?
Again, Director Broderick, through the chair, Director Broderick, again, to get into what potential legal claims might be brought against us, what those theories would be, and if, how we would defend them. Again, that's really getting into an attorney-client privilege discussion that I prefer not to have in a public setting.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just trying to bring forward the fact is that people are going to be disappointed in whatever the decision might be. Some people will be, some people will not. Some people will challenge it. And as a former very close friend of mine who was the general counsel quite a few years back, he always made sure that I understood that you always got to be prepared to get sued, John. And I said, thanks for the warning. And so I think I just wanted to bring that point up, that we may have people after tonight's meeting who are going to say that our decision was a poor one.
Are there any other questions by board members? Seeing none, the current motion on the table at the dais is to.
I didn't have a question, but everyone was speaking, and so I didn't get an opportunity to speak, and I'd like to. Again, I believe that I was here, and Director Broderick was here in 2016 when we had to vote on school closing. And at that time, I'd been on the board for about 6 months, maybe not even 6 months. And that process to me at that time felt like this is just what we need to do right now. This is like, if we're going to do it, like now is the time to do it. And I felt like I didn't have information that would support making that decision at that time. And I have great love for all of our schools. I am St. Paul through and through. This is my community. I love St. Paul. And I need St. Paul to do well. My baby is here, and I know your babies are here, and that really is important to me, and that matters. And I need to make sure they're getting access and opportunities to everything. And I recognize that that doesn't happen in the same way in every building. And because I've been in every one of our schools and multiple times, and our community, it shifts and it changes, and every one of our schools is different. I feel like a gator when I walk through Gaultier. No question about that. I feel like a cougar when I walk through Como. Love Como. I don't take any of this lightly. It has been weighing on my head. It has been weighing on my heart. And my son always asks me, who's mad at you today? It is always someone who is not mad, but frustrated about what they believe was a process they weren't a part of and engaged in, and didn't feel like they had a say in anything. Nobody walks into any school in this district and thinks that they're picking a school that doesn't have everything To them, it has everything. And let's be clear and acknowledge that. It has everything for them, which is why they chose it. And then I also recognize what's not there when I'm looking at our other buildings across the district and resources. And is that a thing that the district can change and shift? Yes, the district subsidizes. And it's not subsidizing with it's just subsidizing the keeping of the doors open, not additional resources and opportunities for students. And that is a thing we need to own as well. And that is not a school community's fault. That falls on us. And we are trying to figure out how to make this work, to figure this out. When I first got on the board, I always said there are 39,000 students in this district. I have 39,000 kids that I have to make decisions for every single day. Sometimes in really tiny ways that nobody would ever know, and sometimes in these very big meetings where everybody is watching. And we are no longer a district of 39,000. We are a district of 35,000. What kind of district are we building for the 35,000 students that we have in this district that is going to get us to some different academic outcomes? And NAACP yesterday said, Minnesota, worst achievement opportunity gap in the country. Every one of us in this room own that, know it, feel it, believe it, want to change it for every kid in this district. I'm not taking any of this lightly. It is still just weighing on my head and weighing on my heart. I need St. Paul to do well, and this is not how we do well, doing the same thing over and over again, believing we're going to get to a different outcome. I respect and appreciate so much, Director Allen, that you say drastic change. Drastic change never feels good to anybody. Nobody wants to do drastic change. But are we comfortable just doing the same thing and trying to use the tape to hold it all together and try to plug holes? Are we purposely trying to build a district that will be sustainable for future generations? For the 35,000 students we have in this district, that is our charge, to make it the best experience they can have. And I don't know if this is the right way. It's the way this is the moment we're in right now. Is it the right way? I do not know. But I think the better way that this could have been framed to community so it wouldn't sting the way that it does right now is, how do we build a district for your child when we are 35,000 and not what we used to be at 39,000? Better conversation framing, language matters, and how we talk about our kids, our individual kids, matter. Parents, our families, students, it's weighing on me. Just know that all of this is weighing on me, and I need us to be better as a district. I need us to come together as a community. I need everybody to know that none of this feels good and or easy. And you did elect the people on this board, and you can make a different decision next time. And you can say all the things that you feel like you need to say to us, and also know that at this moment and at this time, with information that we've got, with what we've heard from community, you did trust us to make really hard decisions. And this isn't easy, and I don't think of it even as courageous. This is the difficulty of having this role when it is so close to people's heart, because it is their babies. It is their kids. And there is no way that makes any of that easy when you're talking about the most important people to families.
Thank you, Director Ellis. Anybody else? Seeing that there is no more questions or comments, the current motion on the table or at the dais is to not close any St. Paul Public Schools for the 2021-22 school year. Vote, please. this year. Yes. For this year,
Is that correct?
Director Broderick. Yes. Vote, please. Dr. Ellis, can you roll call?
All right. Director Ellis is no. Director Vu.
Yes.
Director Foster.
No.
Director Broderick.
Yes.
Director Allen.
No.
Director Kopp.
No.
Director Carrillo.
No.
All right, the motion to not close any St. Paul Public Schools for the 2021-22 school year fails 2-5. The current, I want to return back to Director or Chair Foster's original motion to approve Envision SPPS as proposed and as read by Director Chair Foster. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Excuse me, Vice Chair Vu. Just as a point of procedure, Chair Foster read the resolution. I don't believe that there was an actual motion to approve the resolution.
Oh, there wasn't a motion yet, right? Okay, thank you. So I will motion. I motion that we approve the Envision SPPS as proposed and read by Chair Foster. Do I have a second?
Second.
I was seconded by Director Ellis. Or, I'm sorry, Director Allen. Now we open it up the dais for discussion. Director Ellis? So now we're opening up the dais for discussion on the Envision proposal as read by Chair Foster. Is there any questions by board members on that?
Everybody, all right, thank you.
Director Broderick?
Thank you very much. The Envision SPPS recommendation that was brought to us in October did not satisfy the simple request that I've always made when I ask for a yes vote. That request is always and has always been, give me a plan that I can support. Administration did not, so I could not. I commend my fellow board members for constructing a modified plan to replace the original recommendation. And I also thank them for the diligence and hard work and cooperation that they showed in order to try to do this. However, the modified plan, in my opinion, is still fraught with potential for harm, particularly to certain segments of our community. And certainly has not addressed the cries, and I don't use that term loosely, the cries for clarity and transparency that I've been hearing from hundreds of students, parents, staff, and community over the last several weeks. I had truly expected to hear sadness and maybe even anger from people whose schools were being directly affected. What I was hoping not to hear was a general sense of frustration, disappointment, and distrust from so many different people. And that's what I heard. Unfortunately, and I say this with a great deal of personal sadness as I come to the end of my time on this board. Unfortunately, distrust in our district was clearly on display the last several weeks by people from all of our diverse communities. We can never expect to halt declining enrollment until we restore trust. The modified proposal will only put a Band-Aid on this almost mortal wound of distrust that inflicts us. Therefore, tonight, I am voting no on the resolution brought forward so that we can pause, look to our communities, and take the advice of the St. Paul chapter of the NAACP. They said, start over and do this properly and do it the St. Paul way, together. I will not be on the board in 2022, but I know that this board has the energy, has the dedication, and the love to pause and turn to our communities who have come to us during these last several weeks and offered to help. Yes, we must pause and turn to our communities, start over, and get this right. That may take time, but it's better that we do it right than that we make a mistake that's going to cause us harm. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Director Broderick. Was there any other questions by board members? I did have a logistical question around placement for Chief Turner. So for the schools that remain on the proposal, I want to go back to schools that are closing and they have priority, a choice of where they want to go. If they're closing, they have priority choice. If they're merging, they also have priority choice. Can you again explain how that process works for families who are in those schools and have to confront those situations?
Through the chair, Vice Chair Vu, in a school, if a school is closing, a family, if they don't choose to go to the school that has a receipt reserved for them, for an example, Parkway Montessori School is one of the schools that's been identified to close. A seat will be reserved for all the children in that particular school at their home middle school. So if the child lives in the Battle Creek attendance area, they will have a seat reserved for them at Battle Creek Middle School. In the event that the child and the family does not want to attend Battle Creek Middle School, they would have the option to attend any other middle school in the district, and they will receive closed school priority. That closed school priority serves the family best when they request and enter and submit their request card or their application on time.
So I want to revisit that. When the parents submit their application cards on time, in the case that they don't, what happens? And they still have these priority choices?
In the case that, through the chair, vice chair, in the case that they don't submit it on time, then they would receive closed school priority as a late application. So what the priority does is that if there's a competition, if there's only one seat left in a particular school, and we have a child that has been at a closed school versus a child that has not, the child that has been at the closed school will receive priority for that one last seat. So it provides a closed school priority. In the event that a family member is coming from a merged school, they will receive a merged school priority. A closed school priority is more, is higher, I guess, if you want, think of it that way, than a merged school priority.
Okay, thank you for that. And I also want to ask this question, is that there are actually some families who enroll their kids after school has already started. How would this impact, for families that find themselves in this situation, they have those priority choices, how does this work for them?
Through the chair, vice chair, if a family were to enroll, let's say in August of 22, and they were currently going to Parkway, that would mean that they would have, they don't want to go to their home school, which is Battle Creek. That would mean that they, and if they came in August, they would be competing as a late entry. Although I will say, as we shared earlier, that if a family that is at a closed school does not receive, we don't receive the request card, that means they would have not acted on multiple opportunities of interaction. As you heard earlier, Director Williams has identified a placement person in her office to assign to a particular school. That family is going to receive multiple emails, calls, letters, informing them. Matter of fact, letters are in hold pattern right now based on the vote, and families will receive notification tomorrow as of what this vote was. After that, another letter will go out encouraging them to come to the school choice fair that will be happening in January. After that, another letter or information will go out to them, letting them know that the school that they have a reserved seat for, they're welcome to attend their open house. After that, notification will go out to family if they don't do that, let them know that there are many other school options that they could have within the St. Paul school area, and that they should connect with somebody at the student placement office. In Parkway's example in particular, we do have plans to actually host an on-site information and school choice fair for those particular middle school students. I'm happy to go over specifically what we had talked about earlier to just provide the board with a reminder of the specific steps of how student placement, Office of Family Engagement, as well as the Office of School Support plans to provide families and schools, including staff, with the support that will begin as early as this week.
Thank you, Chief Turner. I just have two more questions to follow up. How does class size limitations factor into these late family entries who don't get their applications in on time?
Thank you. Through the chair, Vice Chair Vu, thank you for bringing that up. That's a very excellent question. And in fact, I like to take the liberty to actually answer that because that has been on the, as you sat there and heard a number of the community members that complained and said that student placement needs to be reviewed. We need to have an active investigation. Students placement's job and role is to encourage families and offer opportunities at any school that has openings. And in fact, as you know, with our teacher SPFE teacher contract, we have class size. And in the fact, for instance, kindergarten is 25 seats. So if a family member comes in at a and happens to apply for a high poverty school, and that school has 2 sections of kindergarten, and there's 50 kids in that school already, that particular school would not be offered for that family. So just, and for example, A number of families came up for Highwood Hills and said that they couldn't get into Highwood Hills. And Highwood Hills is full at pre-kindergarten. And our pre-kindergarten class size is 20. And of those 20 seats, 3 of them are reserved for children with special needs. So in fact, we have 17 seats to offer for each teacher. That is, in this particular case, at Highwood Hills. So if you're the 18th child that submits an application, you would not be offered Highwood Hills and your name would go on a waiting list. And you would be told, I'm sorry, Highwood Hills is full at pre-kindergarten at this time. We'd be happy to put your name on a waiting list. That is not student placement's procedure, policy, or desire to do that. That is something that this community, this board, this administration agreed upon with St. Paul Federation of Teachers. And so in that particular case, in the event that we want to go over a class size, the agreement calls for a class size meeting needs to take place, and needs to happen with parents, with assistant superintendent, with the principal. That may take days, may take weeks for that class size meeting to take place and happen. Once the class size meeting takes place and happens, if it is agreed upon and voted with the number of those members that come to that meeting, if the parents agree, if the teachers agree, that grade level teacher agree, then student placement has the authority to call that parent back and say, Mrs. Turner, you, the class Highwood Hills has accepted your child and willing to take your child, and you can now go to that school. That is a procedure that we have all agreed upon. So in the event that there's room at a particular school, student placement is more than happy to assign a particular child to a particular school. As you all have, one of the things that we have talked about as a community is how we're going to grow this district. And as we look at the student placement office and their procedures and how they place students as a community in order to grow the school, I also think we need to look at some of our agreements that we have in place. In order to be a welcoming community, we need to know and understand that we're sometimes going to have families and communities that not always come in the form of exact class sizes. And so that just gives you an example of what happens with that particular procedure. And that happens at all grade levels. We have a class size average as well as a class size cap that we adhere to and we support.
My final question, Chief Turner, is in the case that there's a class size cap and the class is already full, but a family wants to get into that school and they have priority choice, how do those things sort of run up against each other?
If the through the chair, vice chair, if we're at that cap and they have priority, they would go on a waiting list with closed school priority. And once a seat opens up at that particular grade level, we would be able to place. I will say that's, if I could expand a little bit, that's why it's so important for families to get their information in on time. And student placement office in this year in particular will work with the closed schools and merged schools to make sure that families have their information in on time if they want to choose something else. Because as families get their information in on time, we can look at that information and we can help provide resources to schools. For instance, if we know that 30 more kids want to go to school A and they have the physical capacity, meaning that there's physical room in the school, we would, in that particular case, be able to relocate resources from school A to go to school B. And this is why one of our data points in the data was enrollment and parent demand. And as we grow a district, you all know that in one way to do it is make sure that we have capacity in schools where families want to go. And so when we know that information ahead of time, we can make those adjustments so that we can offer and provide access. As a district, with that process, I think we've done extremely well. Typically, our incoming kindergarten families, we are able to provide about 80%, 86% first choice, meaning that 86% of our families that return their request in on time at the kindergarten level receive their first choice. So traditionally, we hover right between high 80s and low 90s of families that get their request cards in on time. So that's why we strongly encourage families to adhere to those deadlines. And this year, I believe the deadline is February 25th, 2022.
Thank you, Chief Turner. That's all I had for placement. Director Allen, go ahead.
Thank you. Chief Turner, I have a couple clarifying questions also, a couple that have to do with facilities, but one specifically. So with the Obama, it doesn't close until 2023. The community school will remain in Obama in the year 2022 to 2023, correct?
Through the chair. Yes, that's correct, Director Allen.
And while they're there, they will be exposed to and educated about the Montessori program. And then will they have first priority similar to how these other school closings are to that building, which will then become a Montessori or some sort of program?
Through the chair, Director Allen, that is correct, that over the year, it was intentional, as the board requested, to provide that support and time for the Obama students and families to have that additional time to work with and understand the Montessori philosophy and pedagogy so that they could make a decision if that they would like to join J.J. Hill Community and come back together at the building on Holly, which is the Obama building, and provide that continuity for that child that has been physically attending Obama on Holly. Now will continue be able to attend Obama Montessori at Holly, or either the middle school program on Holly. And so that is correct, that time is provided for that.
Okay, now I'm gonna jump to John A. Johnson and the Bruce Vento. I know you gave us the timeline for rebuild for Vento. You didn't give us an area address to where that piece of land was. I never quite got that piece, or I missed it. So if you have that information, and then also, what is the timeline for the Vento rebuild so that they all merge into the building together?
Through the Vice Chair, Director Allen, Director Parent, may I ask you to join me at the podium?
Well, since the man is coming to the table, also, will the rebuild, I'm hoping that the rebuild will also accommodate the Achievement Plus portions of John A. Johnson to the same magnitude that they do right now at John A. Johnson. Can you?
Through the chair, directions of the board, together, Director Allen. Thanks so much. On December 14th, we're actually going to hopefully be having a presentation to the board specifically on codifying the actions of Envision SPPS to the capital plan. So we'll actually have a more robust conversation specifically about timelines and intent. To your two questions specifically, the address of Bruce Vento is 409 Case Street, Case Avenue East. So that is the current and will be the future home of the Bruce Vento program. Again, we are looking to have it be a larger 5-section elementary school post Envision, and we are looking to have a community engagement process following up on the board's actions this evening to define the other parts of the program that will be necessary to support there. So early learning, specialized services, wraparound and community supports, like you mentioned, the Achievement Plus pieces. So those are pieces that will be, the intent is there, and we will lay out a process to affirm those over the next coming months.
We have a committee, or are you going to form a task force of folks that are from the communities, the two communities impacted?
Through the chair, Director Allen, that is the intent, and we'll talk on the 14th about what that stakeholder engagement design process will look like.
Sweet, don't leave the stand. The next question is there any way to begin the construction at Obama sooner so that we can facilitate that merge seamlessly?
Through the chair, Director Allen, we're still very much pushing on the schedule component of this. I would caution to say likely not. A lot of the same program design pieces that we were just talking about with Bruce Vento, we need to do the same with the Montessori and the new grade 6A program. And I would hate to give short shrift to that design process. That's an important piece for us to make sure we are building the right school and program long term. Please know we are trying to be as aggressive as we can be, but it's a fair amount of work necessary to happen in that building, and we want to make sure we are taking advantage of having the space, not have programming in it, and do that construction efficiently and quickly, and then just be out of there for many years to come.
So with the middle school piece though, there's no one in the west wing, and we're pretty clear that it's, you know, it's going to be some sort of project-based but middle school model. So there's a vision of what the facility could look like, not necessarily the programming. Is it possible to kind of get started on that piece so that it can be out of the way?
Through the chair, Director Allen, it's possible, and we'll certainly explore it. Again, I think the idea is to have a pretty holistic understanding of what all is going to happen at that building. So we have to build all the pieces in order to really do that well. I think another piece we want to be sensitive to is respecting the Obama students' experience that last year there in the building. And I think there is an impact to having construction for a different program happening at that same time that we want to at least be sensitive to. But I certainly appreciate and will take to heart your message of go as earnestly fast as we possibly can, and in hopes that we can speed up the time frame to have students on that site. I appreciate that, and we'll take that back.
Thank you.
Any other questions by board members? Director Carrillo.
Yeah, I think I wanted to address comments that were made yesterday during the presentation when we were bringing up the modified plan. We want to understand what the placement policy is going to be going forward regarding schools that came off the list. And specifically, there's concerns by families that were brought up. There is concerns in the community that the placement center, and they may be well-based or not, but the placement center is receiving direction as to where to place students that may not connect or reflect the parents' wishes. So I'm curious to know if there's a policy that parents can refer to. Is it a board policy, or is it just a standard procedure that they follow? You know, the available school placement. Obviously, they have to respect class sizes, and they have to respect facility sizes as well. So I want to elaborate on that and elaborate on schools that were initially part of the program, thinking LEAP, Highwood Hills. If there's space, will parents be able to access them just as normal?
Through the chair, Director Creel, if you're asking about the schools that came off the list, Highwood Hills, Wellstone, and LEAP, those students at those particular schools will not have closed school or merged school priority. If a student that is currently going to Highwood Hills would like to change schools next year, they would be put in the same category as all the other 45 elementary schools, that they're just applying to go from one school to the other school. If your question is asked, how do we make placement decisions when a family enters the student placement center? What typically happens is that a family will sit down and we get their general information about name, address, and where they live. If we believe that they need language support based on their how they answer the question, there is a language assessment that typically takes place that will help determine whether their placement options. Also, depending on if a child receives a certain level of special education or not, that will also determine what programs are offered to that particular child. So there are several factors. I also caution, well, one, I encourage anyone that has an interest in the placement office as a public school building, in essence, not a school building, but a public building that is owned by the St. Paul Public Schools, and anybody is welcome to come to the building at any time and ask for a tour if they want, or would like to understand how the placement process works. But once we figure out the grade level of a child and the address in which they live, we then begin to look at all available openings. And in fact, you may hear, well, such and such school wasn't offered. That very well may be the case because we don't offer schools that don't typically have an opening. Also, based on the fact in this particular case, LEAP is an alternative school. It is identified and funded as an alternative school, just as Gordon Parks, just as Gateway to College, and under normal circumstances, normal statute, we are held accountable to offer all children access to a regular comprehensive education. In this particular time, place, or example, we offer a regular comprehensive program, typically first, as that LEAP is an alternative school in that name. It's alternative. And so families have a right to choose a regular K-12 comprehensive program. We cannot force families just because a child or student may come in and appear they may be an elder person, 18 plus, or appear that they may be bilingual. We cannot assume that. We have to be able to offer both. And in fact, I think this board and we shared earlier that we are legally held and viable to offer a regular comprehensive high school. In fact, we have in previous situations have been cited that we require or make certain students go to certain schools and programs. So as the student placement office, as a St. Paul Public Schools, we have to offer all programs too. So in that particular case, a family, they may live in the Hardin area. Student Placement Center would say, based on your bilingual needs and support that is needed based on, we believe, we have a couple of different programs that we can offer you. You live in the Hardin attendance area, we could offer you Hardin, it's blah, blah, blah. And what I said to this board before, students placement job is to promote, sell, and encourage families to go to whatever school there's openings. So on the day that you come in, if there's openings at Hardin, we're going to support, promote, and sell the heck out of Hardin because that's where we have seats, that's where we have availability. If it's the next day, if it's Central, we do Central based on where you live. And so we require, and I also want to say Director Williams does an excellent job with her and her team with it. And it doesn't, she nor her staff get nothing good out of requiring a student not to go to a particular school. Just as I work for the St. Paul Public Schools, and as you all have said, you love all the St. Paul Public Schools, as I do, as student placement. Their job is to increase enrollment for the overall district. And so we try to match and align that personality, that desire, whether a person needs a bus, whether or not they want the arts, whether or not they want science. We try to match all that based on the students' needs. Start times, all of those types of things go into a placement and request. If a parent comes in and says, I want LEAP, for instance, and they will say typically, okay, let's go through that and make sure that those are the particular programs and things that you want. That's typically how it works.
Follow-up question to that is would you say that there's a need to have staff support families that primarily speak another language than English, and specifically newcomers with language support? And if so, is there ways to mitigate those needs with staff or appointments or ways to assist families that do not speak any English?
Through the chair, Director Creel, at that particular time, and I shared with Highwood Hills community, who was primarily Somali families that I worked with at the time. I shared at the meeting, as well as shared multiple times. There was a short period of time when the office, or when student placement did not have a Somali staff person on time. It was primarily during the pandemic. This particular staff person did leave the district and go home, and that position was open for a while. As soon as we were able to get that position filled with a temporary, we were able to do that. And in fact, the person that was working at student placement office that went back home has returned, and now all languages are represented at the student placement office. And in fact, the student placement office demographics is, I don't know, Director Williams, you can quick figure it out and then let me know. Extremely diverse, and we can give you that information here shortly of the demographics and languages spoke within her office.
Thank you.
Any other questions by board members? Chief Turner, I just want to pause for you to get that answer back. How quickly can you get it before we move on?
Just 1 minute. She's just figuring it out. I can.
What I want to propose is that Director Carrillo, would it be okay if you get this information after the vote?
Yeah, we can get this
Okay.
information
I just
later.
wanted
This
to-
is this is really
Through the
this is-
chair,
yeah.
I have it.
Okay, thank you.
So there are 16 total. Of the 16, 3 speak Hmong, 4 speak Spanish, 1 speaks Korean, 1 speaks Somali, and the remainder speak English. Within the English that are representative, there are both African American and white staff represented within that.
Thank you.
All right, are there any other questions by board members? Seeing none, the current motion on the dais is to approve Envision SPPS as proposed, as read by Chair Foster. Vote, please.
Director Ellis, no. Director Vu,
Yes.
Director Foster,
Yes.
Director Broderick,
No.
Director Allen,
Yes.
Director Kopp,
Yes.
Director Carrillo.
Yes.
Motion to approve Envision SPS as proposed passes 5-2. Chair, do you have any comments to provide?
I think this has been beat up by community. Typically, I have a lot to say. It's people are impacted, and it hurts. Inaction hurts. Action hurts in this situation. I want to thank you guys for working through this and making the best choices in this moment at this time. I also want to thank the community for standing up in solidarity, continuing to be a voice. It doesn't mean it stops here. That's just it. It's going to move forward. And there's going to be a lot of work and action that needs to go forward, moving from here. You've been heard, and tonight it may not feel like that for some communities. It's a process we have to continue. You all need to continue to push and charge us. It's not just about us. It's about each and every one of us and our voices, our actions. And so I at this point, if any other board members would have anything to contribute to that, I feel like folks will want to move on to talk about what's just happened here and what needs to happen next. Open the floor for anyone. Director Ellis.
As I said, it was weighing heavy on my head and heavy on my heart. And like Director Broderick, I had concerns with the revision. Not, like I said, there were pieces of it that I'm okay with. But there are parts of it that I still think that, to Director Carrillo's point, there are larger concerns in the district that we need to address. We have to talk about enrollment and also, again, serving the students that are actually here in our district. I believe that full-heartedly. But there are pieces of the resolution that I just am struggling with, because if parents and families and students aren't going to these merged sites, it is going to have an impact on those sites. And we have not fully fleshed that out. And does that mean we're getting to well-rounded this first year, the second year, or the third year of Envision going forward? And I think that that in itself is going to leave some families in a really uncomfortable spot if they're not getting what we said they were going to get with the decision that this board made. And I did not want to be standing in front of community saying, I knew how this was going to play out, or I didn't know how this is going to play out. I don't know how it's going to play out, and I'm really uncomfortable in that. I need us to do better. I need this district so much to do better. And I don't know if this is the way that we get to that. I understand that this is a step. This board has made a decision, and I will stand with the board in that decision. But I have so many concerns about what comes next for our families, for our students, because they're going to be thinking about this decision and whether or not they stay in St. Paul Public Schools. Bottom line. And whether there's this impacts everybody. It impacts everybody. Every decision impacts every other school in this district. And my question and my charge, and one of the things that I would like to add going forward, is there needs to be surveys that we are sending out to our families. Why are you here? Why do you stay? What do you want? How can we support that? We keep talking about engagement going forward. Don't be afraid of it now, because it's going to come at us a lot faster and harder than it has ever come before. And while I understand how we got to this place, and I think about Director Broderick here, being here for 400 years now, and talking to us about the history of the district and all the decisions that the board over time has kicked down the road and kicked down the road and kicked down the road. And this board made a decision that doesn't kick anything down the road, but it is altering the foreseeable future of this district because this has now happened. And every single one of us sitting here have to own that too. It is going to have an impact on the foreseeable future of this district. And I will always throw down for St. Paul. I will always root for us to rise, but I am scared for us right now too. And I will say that I am scared for this district. I love you. I will throw down for you, but I am also very scared for you, for us, for you and us.
Yeah. So as I stated before, this is really hard, and it's heavy on my heart and heavy on my head too. But the one thing that I knew when I came back to this district years ago, just to even work inside the classroom, is how strong our parents were and how great of teachers we had, how great of administrators we had in our buildings, and what we had the potential to do. And, for years, folks kept showing up to the podium saying, work with community. Community knows what's best. Community knows what we need from our children. And I believe in that. I believe that with the collaboration of community, parents, teachers, principals, administrators, and board, we can build the greatest district in the country. I truly believe that. If I didn't believe that, I wouldn't have sacrificed to come get in this seat to lead here. I think we're in a hard place because of the things that hadn't been being done previously. But we're at this place right now, and hard decisions had to be made. And moving forward, us as a board need to continue to collaborate with community. We need to see better collaboration from our district with community and building out buildings that are the vision of our taxpayers and the parents that have these goals for their children and have these desires for their children and want them to thrive. Because with that energy, that's when we get to this diamond in the rough. And that's what we're looking for right now. Because I'll have to agree with Director Ellis. This isn't a promising plan. This plan doesn't say, as of September, all schools are going to be A-OK. But what it does say is that we're doing something drastically different. And the process I think that we went through to get to this drastic difference is a definite big step towards the drastically different things that we need to do moving forward to build the schools that we can build. There's a few of these on the list that, when I reached out to a lot of the schools that were, on the list for closing, and one of the biggest things that I tried to have conversation with community about is we have to work together to come up with a plan for this. We can't just say, leave this building open and then not have a plan. And then the process, I think that there was some folks who really started to think in that and dive in on that and think about what their building could turn into. And I just want to encourage you to not stop the fight now, because we're just getting started. Now is the time to go and mobilize more people around the conversation of where we're at moving forward. And that goes for these schools that we're deciding to not close and the schools that we're deciding to merge. I think moving forward, we're going to have a heavy couple years. Transition is always hard. I've never had to experience it on this mass amount, but I know that a transition of a principal takes a couple years, and it's hard work as somebody who's working inside the building to kind of get the culture and the space to where we want to get to. And I really want to charge our community, and I really want to charge our parents, and I really want to charge our district to really step to the plate and put in that heavy load. Because I honestly do believe that St. Paul Public Schools could be the spot where our children could have all the opportunities in the world. They can find themselves. Within themselves, they can grow themselves. And we can be the tool and the catalyst that helps to move that. But right now, we're just not showing up. And so something had to change drastically. This happened to be the thing. But that doesn't mean it's time to stop. So with a heavy heart and with a heavy mind, I approve this proposal. But I know that it definitely is going to put more work on my shoulders. And I'm up for the fight. I'm up for the work. It's going to put more work on our community, but I know that they're up for the fight and they're up for the work. Because they've been showing up time and time again for years and years and years and years, asking for the opportunity to do this. We as a district just have to reach our hands out and accept their help and start to build these institutions that will work for the city of St. Paul. That's my 2 cents on it, for real.
Okay. We talk about buildings, and I have to say this, and this may be completely off topic and off task, but we're talking about student outcomes. Schools are just one part of it. We got to talk about our curriculum. We got to talk about our staff. We got to talk about our parent engagement. It's not one piece. And so I want folks to remain focused. There are many, many pieces that we are trying to do. And the hard realities as a leader in this district is we don't talk about very specific things because we're Minnesota nice. When you're a district where you're the second largest disparities of black kids across the country, we got to talk about that. And when interventions get put in place in schools to target kids and it becomes a problem because other kids are missing, we got to talk about that. When all of our kids succeed, all of our kids, lowest performers, we bring them up, all other performers will come up. So this is one part of that puzzle. And that is the conversation we need to continue having. We talk about doing things boldly, trying to do things that are not different, and we got to talk about other things such as race and what happens in buildings to students as well. I just want to be honest about that. We find one thing to hone in on in this district and we'll run with that, but it's a multitude of wrongs that are happening to kids each and every day. We are doing some harm to communities right now by this decision. But the goal is to get to a place and space where we're showing up every day and kids have what they need. Staff have the supports they need to give kids what they need. And we're not there. And that's not just this district's responsibility. We take the burden of community because our schools are our hub. They're the center of those communities. And we have a responsibility and an obligation to provide kids what they need and what families want. But note, it's bigger than us. It's bigger than you. And we all have to work together to get those other folks on board to look at education as it needs to be. It's a right for each and every child. So I'm sorry. Anything else, anyone? So Director Carrillo.
Yeah, I'd like to speak about the vote. I'm not proud of this vote. This is not a great moment in my life that I'll cherish or think that it's something that I want to feel like this was a thing to remember. The truth is I could have easily voted no, and stepping away from the board tomorrow, the next couple of days, it would have been easy for me to say no. And the reason why I voted yes is because I know deep down that future compositions of the board will be hesitant to pick this up again. We'll have to pick up a worse version of this. And the truth is, even though we don't like to admit it, is that finances are not going to support the amount of schools that we have. And the enrollment is not going to support the amount of schools that we have in 4 or 5 years on this trend, even with this vote. This vote, however, does not mean that this is a solution. And I speak to this right now because we're at a place where we had such low enrollment at specific schools that we had to address. And even through the modified plan of addressing, specific situations that we felt very uncomfortable about. I want to address the fact that as we came together and worked together as a board, we put our differences aside to attempt to find a solution. It was not easy, and I don't think it's a solution per se to the enrollment problem. The enrollment problem is bigger, and my 2 concerns going forward for the district, for St. Paul as a whole, are that we are not, we are becoming a hostile city to families. We are making it hard for people of color to feel welcome in our schools. And I feel that we are not addressing the fact that it's more and more expensive to live in here. And we're not joining hands with our city and with our other community members to say, stop, we need to change. We as a city need to be less greedy. We need to be less segregated. We need to be willing to not say the nice thing and actually say the truth. And we need to be willing to be humble and listen to everybody instead of lay down plans from the top. And this is something that I truly believe is going to be the solution to our enrollment problem, is when we can actually treat people with trust. I do believe that what Director Broderick said was true. A plan without trust does not beget success. The problem is that in the future, a hypothetical future where we hadn't passed this plan, as we had come to some sort of an agreement on, I could not see anybody willing to actually take action, and the consequences snowball and snowball and snowball, and they become bigger and bigger. So I do see both sides. I don't want to disregard the fact that this is painful, this is hurtful, this is actually, frankly, an insult to a lot of our schools. And I don't want to minimize that. And I don't want to say that, I would go up to them and say that I am a hero to them or anything like that. I'm honestly in a position that is not good. But I will say this, is that as I approach this, I know that the charge of the district and of our administration is to look to ourselves and transform, not the plan, but the people. Let's look and see at what we need to change in ourselves as an organization and as people to regain that trust. Because if we don't do that, this means nothing. Voting yes means nothing. Voting no means nothing. The outcome will be the same. We will lose the kids and we will lose the families. They don't trust us. They need to trust us. They need to trust that we listen to them. The staff needs to trust us. Staff needs to trust their principals. Principals need to trust us. We can't antagonize. We can't continue to antagonize people with plans and no action, plans and no heart, plans and no care. And I believe that everybody in here has a heart for success for all of our students, has a willingness to want to make St. Paul a place that welcomes every kid, regardless of where they come from, what their background story is, what trauma or success they came from. But we actually need to stop and look at how we're doing things, what biases we're carrying, and specifically what is institutional tools of oppression we are using without realizing. What kind of hand-me-down stress we're passing down to our subordinates. And if we don't do that, we will continue to fail. So I charge you as a board, I'm no longer here, technically speaking, a resolution, and something needs to happen that charges us to be better at what we're doing, to actually change. Because well-meaning is not good enough right now. We need well-doing. Thank you. Director Cobb.
Thank you, Chair Foster. I think a lot about just about 2 years ago joining the board and Envision SPPS was one of the first things we talked about. And then so much has happened since then, and we feel a long way from there. I just wanted to say thank you to my colleagues for our conversations and our collaborations, to families and community and the hours of in-person meetings, phone calls, email exchanges, site visits with principals and teachers, work with administration, small groups, information. I mean, tons of learning happened for me. I am better at my job now. I understand our district in a way I didn't before, and I have all of you to thank for that. What happens next is up to us. We get to choose what we do, how we show up, how we work. I'm real clear-eyed about how hard this is. And like my colleagues have said, like, I'm ready for that work. And I look forward to partnering with our community who have brought forth great ideas, who have told us where we made mistakes, who told us how we can do better. I want those conversations to continue, and I hope they do. This isn't the end of something. Let me back up. It is the end of something for some of our communities. And I hope from this difficult and heavy moment that we're in, something beautiful can grow. And I'm looking forward to doing that work with all of you.
Okay, with that.
If there weren't any more questions or comments about SPPS and Vision, I just want to acknowledge that this is Director Creo's last meeting. Oh, okay. I just want to acknowledge that this is Dr. Creo's last meeting on the board. And I just, first of all, want to say that I personally witnessed that he stepped up to the plate, that he went above and beyond his duties. As I said before, if you're an interim board member, I think the expectations are just different than if you are elected. But he has gone above and beyond. He has pushed us to be better as board members, and I just want to thank him. Thank him for his service.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your support in this process. Yeah, it's a hard time to at this moment to say goodbye, but thank you for everything.
Anyone else want to say anything about that? And I will just throw your own words back at you, Director Clear. You have led with action. You have led with your heart. You have led with care. There has been intentionality in the work here. You have not been a seat filler. And that is very observable to anyone watching and looking in. So thank you for your service and stepping up and standing in the gap during this time. And we look forward to continue working with you. See, you got a fan club. And I also like to acknowledge Brian. Brian, who stood in as well as the board secretary over these many weeks. Today is your last day with us as well. Last meeting, yeah, with us. And so I want to say thank you as well for being tireless and last minute responses and getting some things right when we didn't have a clue. Thank you very much. It has been appreciated. We have appreciated your expertise in your area as well. Thank you. As a reminder, there is a committee of the board meeting on Tuesday, December 7th, 2021 at 4:30 p.m. Also on Tuesday, December 14th, 2021 at 6:05 p.m. There is a regular meeting of the Board of Education beginning with public comment at 5:30 p.m. Please view the audio stream link online at the board website, www.spps.org/VOE. Please view the board website for updates or to be added to the mailing list of public notices. Please contact our board secretary. We invite members of the community to submit public comment for the regular meetings of the Board of Education through leaving messages with the board secretary at sarah.dalkey@spps.org or 612-434-1105. That will be compiled and distributed to board members, and or by sending email statements to the Board of Education email at sb.members@spps.org. Submitting comments online via public comment input form at www.spps.org/BOE. With that, I would move to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second that.
Vice Chair Fu, motion was seconded by roll call, please.
Director Ellis is yes. Director Vu.
Yes.
Director Foster.
Yes.
Director Broderick.
Yes.
Director Allen.
Yes.
Director Kopp.
Yes.
Director Carrillo.
Yes.
That vote passes unanimously. The time is now 8:20 and we are adjourned. Thank you all for your time.